a series of well-known verses that Srila Prabhupada uses consistently and exhaustively throughout his teachings, either by directly quoting the verses or by paraphrasing them and referring to their meanings. So that's a very wonderful chapter, chapter 5. And the first 5 verses are all worth memorizing, at least. And then Lord Rishabhdev had 100 sons, the chief of which was Maharaj Bharata. And then we get into the narration of Maharaj Bharata and how he became bewildered by a deer after he left his kingdom and went to the forest, and then took his next birth as a deer. Oh my goodness. Oh dear. And then, but in that birth as a deer, he remembered his previous life and how even though he was on the level of Bhava, he fell down from that position due to his attachment for the little Bambi. And our Jamuna just had gotten a shirt from Ross with Bambi on it. And then she decided that that was the deer that bewildered Maharaj Bharata. But when he became a deer in his next life, he was Jatismara. He remembered his previous birth. That is extremely rare. We've discussed this before, how there's you have these people that give you these past life regressions, and that inevitably in your previous life you were, Napoleon or in the Pharaoh or, King of England or whatever. But in his previous life, he actually was Maharaj Bharata, the king of the earth planet, the emperor of the planet, and after which India, this planet is named after him, and specifically India is called Bharatavarsha, after Maharaj Bharata. So then in this next life, he took a human birth as Jadabharata, and this is described in several chapters, beginning with chapter 9, the supreme character of Jadabharata, and then the discussion between Jadabharata and Maharaj Rahugana, in which Jadabharata was acting as an avadut, because he didn't want to become entangled by Maya. So he pretended to be like a retardo who couldn't do anything right, like the village idiot. His father was trying to instruct him, how you wash your hands after passing stool, for example. He would wash his hands before passing stool and not afterwards. And then finally he was not speaking at all, and he was very disinterested in anything to do with normal social intercourse. So they had him standing guard at night in the agricultural fields, because sometimes the animals come at night to plunder the agricultural produce. But when there's a human there with a stick or something, then the animals are scared off, and they won't spoil the endeavors of the farming. So they had him doing that because he couldn't do anything else. So at least he could stand guard in the fields at night. And then he was recruited by the agents of King Rahugana, who had lost one of their palanquin carriers. There's 4 men carry the palanquin, one on each pole on each corner of the palanquin. And they had lost one carrier. I don't know what the cause was. He could no longer perform his duty, so they needed to get somebody else. And they were looking for someone, and then they found Jadabharata. And Jadabharata was very powerfully built, was a strong, stout fellow. They said, this guy will do. And he didn't protest. He didn't say anything. And so they took him. All right. You're now the palanquin carrier, number 4. And so he was carrying the palanquin, but he saw that there were some ants in the path, and he didn't want to disturb the ants or step on them. So in neglect of being a smooth, efficient palanquin carrier, he became like the flat tire of the palanquin. Kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. And it was giving the king a bumpy ride. So the king stopped the whole thing and said, "Why is this palanquin being carried in such a ridiculous manner? I am the king. Palanquin should be carried properly." And the other palanquin carrier said, "It's the new guy. He's not carrying properly. He's stopping and avoiding, dancing around the ants. And what can we do? That's not him." So he began to chastise him. And he looked at him. He's very stout, strongly built, and he said sarcastically, "Oh, you poor skinny fellow, you're not getting enough to eat. Is that the reason you're too weak to perform your duties as the palanquin carrier?" And he was insulting him in various ways because he was, upset as a king. And then finally, for the first time, Dhirodatta began to speak. And he says, "Actually, I am neither fat nor skinny, nor short nor tall. I am not this material body. I am the spirit soul within the body." And as he began instructing him, King Rahugana was like, he's an educated Kshatriya. Kshatriyas are educated in the royal court, and they're taught spiritual life. And Kshatriya is higher caste, just below the Brahmanas. So they're educated spiritually. And when he heard the instructions of Dhirodatta, he got down off the palanquin and he offered his obeisances to Dhirodatta. The other palanquin carriers and the king's guards and everybody else was like, "What? What's she doing? What's the king? He's offered obeisances to this dummy we found in the field." And they couldn't believe it. And then they carried on. So chapter 10 and chapter 11 of this 5th canto are the discussions between Dhirodatta and Maharaj Rahugana, and then Dhirodatta instructs Maharaj Rahugana. And in chapter 12, conversation between Maharaj Rahugana and Dhirodatta. In chapter 13, further talks between King Rahugana and Dhirodatta. So that's quite a few chapters there of transcendent enlightenment. And then chapter 14 is called The Material World as the Great Forest of Enjoyment, which is a very powerful chapter that exposes the pitiful condition of the covered spirit soul who thinks that he's his body and is trying to enjoy sense gratification in this life, and how the analogy is being given to lost in a great forest and being subject to the attack of different animals, etc. Very powerful chapter. Then next it goes on to describe the descendants of King Priyabrata. And then we get into the cosmic part of the 5th canto, which is extremely difficult to understand for ordinary persons. And most devotees don't have a clue when it comes to these things that are revealed in the subsequent chapters. Chapter 16, a description of Jambudweep, and then the descent of the river Ganges, and then the prayers offered to the Lord by residents of Jambudweep, and then a description of the island of Jambudweep, and then chapter 20, studying the structure of the universe according to the Vedic paradigm, which is not at all what we learned in high school or what they teach in the astronomy department at the most exalted University of Arizona, which is very famous as a school of astronomy, one of the leading centers of astronomy and space studies in the world is the University of Arizona. Space, the final frontier. But there is another space that is the final frontier. It is the space between the ears. Is it a vacuum? Is there no intelligent life? So sometimes that maybe seems to be the case amongst the human beings. So they want to conquer outer space, but they have not conquered the inner space. And then the next chapter is entitled The Movements of the Sun and then the Orbits of the Planets. And then chapter 23, the Shishumar planetary systems. Chapter 24, a description of the subterranean heavenly planets, which modern education is not even aware of the existence of such. In chapter 25, the glories of Lord Ananta. And then finally, chapter 26, a description of the hellish planets. So the fifth canto is extremely powerful. And there are many verses in the fifth canto that are not in the regular shloka format with the regulated number of syllables per line and 4 lines. There's a lot of prose in there. So it's quite unique even for the Bhagavatam. So chapter 1 is entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And there is a nice chapter summary that is written by Srila Prabhupada, which he has taken after consulting the commentaries of the Acharyas. And we'll read this chapter description now. This chapter describes how King Priyavrata enjoyed royal opulence and majesty, and then returned to full knowledge. As if there is a difference between enjoying royal majesty and opulence and full knowledge. Generally speaking, that is. Distinction is made. King Priyavrata was detached from worldly opulence, and then he became attached to his kingdom. But finally, he again became detached from material enjoyment. When King Parikshit heard about this, he was struck with wonder, but he was somewhat bewildered as to how a devotee with no attachment for material enjoyment could later become attached to it. Thus, in astonishment, he questioned Shukadeva Goswami about this. Of course, we see that sometimes someone becomes a devotee and appears to be detached from sense gratification. And then later they become very attached to sense gratification. But that is not the case with Maharaj Priyavrata. He's a very elevated Vaishnava. So therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was astonished because he's such an elevated Vaishnava, not just some ordinary person who has some passing interest in Krishna consciousness and then once again becomes covered by Maya. These nice choker garlands. As one devotee has cleverly put it, when you're trying to understand what's going on with the material energy, and someone may take shelter of the material energy, but they may be worried what's going to happen to them. But Maya says, don't worry, I got you covered. Yeah, she's got you covered all right. And that's the material energy. Maya has these two potencies, the throwing potency and the covering potency. So the throwing potency, when one, what is it?
It's you, but when it's on a phone, it's
oh, okay. I see. I am disturbing my own class. Just behold my mystic opulence. Let's see how powerful is the internet. Okay, now I get it. So, when we decide that we no longer want to serve Krishna, then we are summarily ejected from the being sheltered by the internal potency of Krishna. Mahatmanas tumam parta, daivam prakritim ashrita, bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhuta dimagviyam. The great devotees, Mahatmas, the great souls, gyatva bhuta dimagviyam, they know Krishna's glories and the reality of Krishna's inconceivable potency. Gyatva bhutadim avyayam, Krishna's unlimited spiritual nature. Therefore, daivam prakritim ashritaha, they take shelter of this daivi prakriti, or yogamaya, the internal potency of Krishna. Bhajantyananya manaso, within their minds they're always worshipping Krishna unlimitedly. Bhajantya, ananya, without deviation. Ananya bhakti. Because they're in full Krishna consciousness. So, but when the living entities, even in the spiritual world, they somehow or other come to this decision, we have somehow or other done this ourselves, that, why am I serving Krishna? Let me be the enjoyer. And then they're cast aside from the shelter of the internal potency. And then they're kicked out by Maya, that's the throwing potency. And then their consciousness is covered by Maya. I'm saying there, but it's our consciousness becomes covered by Maya. And Prabhupada says that the result of this covering of Maya, that one becomes filled with a sense of godlessness. One's heart becomes filled with this sense of godlessness. And the example par excellence of that sense of godlessness and wanting to be the enjoyer and be the supreme is exemplified by who? Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. They're big demons, and they try to defy the authority of the Supreme Lord and take his place, as if such a thing were even remotely possible, which it is not. So we see just looking around us in contemporary human society, that there are many, many persons who are filled with this sense of godlessness, almost as if they were intoxicated by the material energy. Of course, they are also intoxicated by alcohol, drugs, and other things, but intoxicated by this false pride and this sense of self-importance. And just like when someone who is taking intoxication, their consciousness becomes covered, and they can't properly think or perceive or act or drive, as it were. So one who is covered by the material energy cannot properly understand one's identity as a servant of Krishna, and then one tries to act in various contrary ways to the devotional service of Lord Krishna. And taking shelter of the demoniac qualities becomes very bewildered and deluded, as Krishna very nicely explains, talking about the demoniac nature in the Bhagavad Gita. So, Maharaj Pariksit is astonished that a great devotee like Maharaj Priyavrata, who was completely detached from any concept of material enjoyment and totally absorbed in his spiritual existence, could again take part in Grihastha life, especially as a big royal emperor. And And Shukadeva Goswami said that devotional service, being transcendental, cannot be deviated by any material influences. So Priyavrata had received transcendental knowledge from the instructions of Narada, and therefore he did not want to enter a materialistic life of enjoyment in the kingdom. However, his father, Manu, wanted him to take over the kingdom, and he did not want to follow that instruction. He wanted to disobey. So Manu brought in some backup reinforcements in the form of Lord Brahma. So he doesn't want to take the kingdom, he wants to remain renounced. Brahmaji, can you help in this regard? Sometimes we're trying to get someone to perform their service and they won't do it, then you have to bring in the big guns, like, a senior devotee or a sannyasi or even the guru, in order to convince them to perform their duty, hearing from superior authorities. So, at the request of such superior demigods as Lord Brahma and Lord Indra, the king of heaven, so then Priyavrata relented. Okay, I will accept the post of emperor and engage myself in this business of managing the kingdom and having a family life and all that. Everything is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller. And everyone must work accordingly. Prabhupada says that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that everyone follows my path in all respects. So, just like they had that routine from the famous 1970s British comedy troupe, Monty Python's Flying Circus. No one escapes the Spanish Inquisition. That was one of their routines. So no one escapes the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone is following the orders of the Lord. Just as a bull is controlled by a rope tied to its nose, so all conditioned souls are forced to work under the spells of the modes of nature. A civilized man, therefore, works according to the institution of varna and ashrama, which are meant to regulate one's activities in life in such a way that one remains dutiful and regulated and gradually makes spiritual advancement. Even in materialistic life, however, no one is free to act. Everyone is compelled to accept a certain type of body offered by the Supreme Lord. You think, well, I'm free, I can do whatever I want, but you're not choosing your next body. You're forced to take that body by the arrangement of the Lord and according to your work in this life. So you're not really free, but you're forced. Like there was in the late 1960s, Srila Prabhupada was in Seattle, and one man was saying that, why should I bow down? I don't bow down to anyone. Why should I bow down? Why should I bow down to God? And Prabhupada says, yes, you don't have to bow down now. But at the time of death, everyone bows down. Everyone bows down. I'm reminded of that photograph of the scene in Guyana of Jim Jones and his followers, where they drank the poison Kool-Aid as an act of mass suicide, although I think many drank it not realizing what was in it. You kind of lied to them. Hey, everybody have some nectar drink. And then you see all the bodies laying face down on the ground. They drink the poison and they fall down. So everyone bows down at death. You may be very proud and strong and fit and upright, but when you're forced to leave this body, then you have to bow down. So everyone bows down. Everyone is under the superior control of God, like it or not. In many cases, not liking it at all. Liking it not one bit. But everyone has to bow down. So why not, Prabhupada is telling this gentleman, voluntarily bow down now to the Lord and surrender to Him, and then come under His shelter instead of waiting for Him to smack you down like the, what is it, WWF, Friday Night Smackdown, or whatever, Saturday Night Smackdown, I don't know what night it is. I've never actually seen it, but I've heard of it. So it's that Maya smacks one down, you're done. And then you're forced to accept another body. That's not a voluntary thing. That's involuntary. Just like at the time of death, one's throat becomes clogged up with mucus and this sound is made. And then one chokes to death at the time of death. So that's not a voluntary act, to say the least. So everyone is compelled to accept a certain type of body offered by the Supreme Lord, and thus be allotted different grades of happiness and distress. Therefore, even if one artificially leaves home and goes to the forest, he again becomes attached to materialistic life. You know the example of Sobari Muni was meditating under the water for thousands of years, 10,000 years. So he's detached. He's under the water. You know, he's not even in the village. He's not even in the forest. He's underwater where like, you can't get me, Maya, right? And then while he's there meditating, he sees two fish copulating. And his mind becomes so agitated that he has to give up his meditation and go, go look for a wife. Poor guy. You would think he had it made. His meditation, he's fixed up. And then, you can be meditating, close the eyes, and then in one corner, in one eye, you see some girl, and it's like, whoa, where did she come from? Let me go talk to her. Like that. What are you doing here? Who is your family? There are examples of that in Bhagavatam. So family life, this is a very interesting statement here Prabhupada makes. Usually we think of family life in terms of the instructions of Prahlad Maharaj. Griham andakupam. That materialistic family life is griham andakupam. Anda means blind, and kupa means well. So one may be walking that night and there's an uncovered well with no wall around it, and one doesn't see the well, and one falls into the well. This happened to a devotee I know, Itanagari Das, who was for many years in Mayapur. Is he still there? Doing Harinam? He was doing Harinam there. So he was in the village somewhere in India, and he walked and he fell into a well, broke his back. He was rescued from the well and spent many months in some crummy, half-baked excuse for a hospital in India, a dirty bed, because he broke his back. So he knows about Grihamanda Kupam, blind well of material existence. But here, family life is compared to a fortress for practicing sense control. It's the fortress. You're protected from the attacks of Maya by being in a stable, regulated position. Was that from the 14th chapter of the 10th canto? Stane Shutikatim Tanuvan Manubir. One should remain in one's position and go on hearing and chanting. So even though one may be in family life, like Maharaj Priyavrata was, he's protected. It's like a fortress. And in that fortress, one is practicing sense control. And when the senses are controlled, one may live either at home or in the forest. There is no difference, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur tells us. Grihe tako, bane tako. Look at the next line. That whether grihe tako, bane tako, whether one is at home, griha, or in the forest, bane, if one is Krishna conscious, then it doesn't matter. There is no difference, as Prabhupada says here. So when Maharaj Priyavrata, following the instruction of Lord Brahma, accepted the royal throne, his father Manu left home for the forest. Maharaj Priyavrata then married Barhishmati, the daughter of Vishwakarma. In the womb of Barhishmati, he begot 10 sons, named, so anyone planning on having children, here's a list of cool names that you might want to think about. Agnidra, Id Majiva, Jagyabahu, Mahavira, Hiranyareta, Grita Prishta, Savana, Medhatiti, Biti Hotra, and Kavi. He also begot one daughter whose name was Urjaswati. Maharaj Priyavrata lived with his wife and family for many thousands of years. The impressions from the rims of Maharaj Priyavrata's chariot wheels created 7 oceans and 7 islands. What are those 7 islands? North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, Antarctica, 7 continents, surrounded by various bodies of water. Those are called dvipas, or islands. Of the 10 sons of Priyavrata, 3 sons named Kavi, Mahabira, and Savana accepted sannyas, the 4th order of life. And the remaining 7 sons became the rulers of the 7 islands. Maharaja Priyavrata also had a second wife, in whom he begot 3 sons, named Uttama, Raivata, and Tamasa. All of them were elevated to the posts of Manu. So there are different Manus that have prescribed time for being the Manu. So there are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma. So in this way there are different Manus, and all 3 of these, Uttama, Raivata, and Tamasa, became Manus. Shukadev Goswami thus described how Maharaj Priyavrata achieved liberation. So he was fixed up spiritual life, and then he was pressured to accept the emperorship of the world, of the universe, and then he did accept that, and he ruled for many thousands of years. This is back during the very beginning of the universe, creating the continents and the 7 oceans and all those kind of wonderful things. And then the 5th canto goes into a very elaborate description of the different dvipas, or islands, one of which is called Jambudvipa. And within those islands there are different varshas. And the most important varsha on this planet is Bharata Varsha, named after Maharaj Bharata, and that is India. So therefore, the history of ancient India is called the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata, it's not the Mahabharat, the Mahabharata. Mahabharat would be a very big bharat, which one would have, depending on the cook, one can have perhaps at lunchtime or as part of the Indian night or some entree. That is a bharat. So Arjuna is not the sign of Bharat. The great personality of the Bharat. No, he's the sign of Bharata. And he's a descendant, actually, of Maharaj. Bharata. And thus we have the Bharata Varsha. And then, of course, this whole lineage, the Priyavrata Maharaj and Rishabdev and all that's described in the 5th canto, those are the descendants of Maharaj Bharata. All right, so any questions, comments, realizations, oculations? Yes.
I was under the
No,
impression,
I meant occlusions.
I was under the impression that the Bharata that Arjuna is a descendant of is different from the Bharata of the 5th canto.
I don't think so.
Because in the 9th canto, there's another Bharata. Then there's also Lord Rama's brother Bharata, but one was positive that in the 9th canto, there's a different Bharata.
Well, the original Bharata is, everyone's pretty much descended from him.
But
Because he goes back to antiquity before the appearance of Lord Ramachandra and his brother Bharata.
that could be said also. But I was under the impression that there's a Prabhupada mentions one purport in the 9th canto, I think, where he says this Bharata, there's 3 Bharatas, and this Bharata is the one who's later in the 9th canto we hear of, at least the beginning of the dynasty in which Arjuna takes birth.
Yes. So there's 3 Bharatas and there are many Bharats.
Also, what is a Bharat?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
A Bharat is a thing like made with cabbage and tomatoes and
Deep fried.
fried. It's a preparation.
Sounds good.
Sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes Muzman makes Bharats.
And imagine if you had the Mahabharat. I mean, that's.
Yeah, and if you get the first Bharat from the Lord's plate, that's the Mahabharata. It is not 100,000 shlokas. The Mahabharata is 100,000 shlokas. It's the biggest epic known to man. Bigger than the Iliad and the Odyssey combined, which are the famous Western epics. But those are like small time compared to the Mahabharata. So it is a great work, and it is sometimes called the 5th Veda, because what is in the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, is one chapter in the Mahabharata. Right before the beginning of the Kurukshetra war, which the Mahabharata describes in great detail, Krishna and Arjuna are on the chariot before the battle, and Arjuna wishes to see who is gathered there. All the people he has to fight and kill. His martial arts guru, grandfather Bhishma, his cousin brothers. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to kill all these people. Like, if I'm going to fight and win a battle, I want to win it and enjoy a kingdom with all these people in it. These are my people. So why would I want to fight a battle and kill everybody? That would be the reason to have the kingdom. That doesn't make any sense. And then his bow is slipping from his hand. He's sweaty. His mind is reeling. And he says, "Oh, Govinda, I shall not fight." And this is the arrangement of Krishna to speak the perennial wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, not only for the benefit of Arjuna to engage him in the battle. Prabhupada indicates that the whole Bhagavad Gita was spoken just to get Arjuna fired up to fight, to get him angry, get him going, so he would fight, perform his duty. Like, if you don't fight, if you don't do your duty, then everyone's going to call you a wuss. And your name and your fame and your reputation will be ruined. And he said, for a Kshatriya, infamy is worse than death because of their pride, and they're so passionate that you say, oh, he's a Kshatriya, but he left the battlefield. We'll have to meditate in the bushes somewhere. He's a yellow belly. No, like in the old cowboy movies, and one gunfighter wants to insult another gunfighter. You're just a yellow belly. he ain't got no guts. So if they say that about you, Arjuna, what will that do to you as a Kshatriya? People will laugh at you and they'll speak of you in condescending terms. So it's like prodding him. Come on, man. You're not going to let that happen. That's not befitting a Kshatriya, someone of royal lineage. You know, Kshatriya means brave, courageous, never backs down. Like I believe it was Tom Petty that told us, and I won't back down. So Arjuna was told, don't back down. So he didn't. He took it to heart. Krishna's firing him up and inspiring him and enlightening him with transcendental knowledge. But that enlightenment is meant not just for Arjuna, but it's meant for every living entity to understand spiritual knowledge, that I am not the body, I am the soul, and my real duty is to render service to Krishna. That's who I am. I'm the servant of Krishna. And due to the influence of Maya, I've completely forgotten that identity. And like, what am I doing, man? No, let me understand further who I really am and engage myself properly instead of just, farting around in the material world trying to be a big enjoyer and just getting smashed all the time and going birth after birth after birth. It just doesn't cut it. Like Lord Rishabdev says in this 5th canto, Nasadu manye yata atmano yam asandapi kleshada asadeha. I said, I think it not befitting an intelligent person to again involve himself in sense gratification, sense gratificatory activities, by which he perpetually takes one body after another, asanapi ashada klesha deha, and undergoes the kleshas of material existence, the sufferings, the miseries. That is not befitting an intelligent person to foolishly do that. No. An intelligent person must engage himself in tapodhyam, putukayena sattvam, sudyad desmad brahma saukyam tanantam. In austerities meant for spiritual advancement, by which one becomes relieved of being covered by Maya, and one can advance in Krishna consciousness. And Brahma Saukyam, one can taste Brahma Saukyam, spiritual happiness, Tvanantam, which is unlimited and goes on forever. So we need to get a little printing thing and put that on your Brahma sweatshirt, the Brahma Saukyam, Saukyam on there. Sukha means happiness. Brahma Saukyam, spiritual happiness, which is unlimited and goes on forever. It's eternal. It doesn't stop. It just keeps getting better. And in material existence, nothing keeps getting better. Everything keeps getting worse. Just the nature of Maya, as they used to say. It's the nature of the beast. When we were doing Harinam daily in front of the Air and Space Museum, Smithsonian Museum, which is the most visited museum in the world, open 365 days a year. Busloads and busloads and busloads of teenagers from all over America come there during their spring breaks. Fantastic preaching. But we had a permit from the National Park Service that would have to, it was a demonstration permit. We had to renew that every 3 weeks, like a bureaucratic procedure. And the park director was talking with us, and there were so many difficulties with that bureaucracy and that administration, and then the parklands themselves and what different people want to do there. And describing those difficulties and those problems, he said, it's the nature of the beast. So that is the nature of Maya. Maya is a beast. And the nature of the beast is asanapi kleshada asadeha. One takes another body after another body after another body and suffers the miseries of material existence. You don't have to convince anyone so much because everyone is experiencing those miseries. Maybe they're so covered they don't realize and understand it because they're so foolish and so covered. But if one even has a modicum of intelligence, a hint of intelligence, and he'll realize, oh yeah, it's a fact. I'm suffering like a dog. Even if one is young and handsome and beautiful and rich and all those other things. There's this one young, handsome, rich, beautiful young man who's driving his, Maserati or something, and he ran over some other kids in the crosswalk at U of A and killed 3 of them. You think he's enjoying now? No, he's in trouble. His whole life is ruined. Not only did he run over the kids, because everyone knows when you're in the crosswalk, then the cars have to stop. But he just ran right through and ran over and killed them. And then he booked. He took off. Of course, they caught him. And so even though he's rich, it's still his life is, no more fun. He's not enjoying it. He's not happy. The material modes have swallowed him up and made him suffer because he was foolishly intoxicated and driving like a fool. Of course, one doesn't have to be intoxicated to drive like a fool. One can simply be a fool and drive like that. We see that every day. It reminds me, I need to make sure my brakes are good because you certainly need them around here. All right, anything else? Yes.
Thank you for a wonderful class, as always. I was just wondering, being a new devotee and reading Fifth Canto as your first book, did you have any trouble accepting the science that you found in there, and the descriptions of the way the universe is?
No, none whatsoever. Of course, most of the descriptions of the universe I couldn't understand. But reading Prabhupada's books, specifically Srimad Bhagavatam, I immediately understood one thing. Oh, this is the truth. This is factual. This is not fantasy. Although I had read 1,000 science fiction novels and short story collections in my teen years. But that's like suspension of disbelief. That's just, that's just having fun. It's like going to a movie. It's not real. It's not real. They're killing a bunch of guys and you're laughing. Yeah, they're not really killing a bunch of guys. It's just a movie. It's fantasy. It's entertainment. But when I read Bhagavatam, I said, oh, this is factual. Somehow or other, I immediately understood. This is factual. This is the way it really is. Because I knew that the way that modern education presents things as they are not as they are. I couldn't accept, they don't know anything. Natevadu swartagatim hi Vishnu, jarashaya ye bahirarti maninaha. That because of being attached to sense gratification and thinking that which is external is the reality, then people don't know. Natevadu, they do not see swartagatim hi Vishnu, that the real self-interest is to worship Lord Vishnu. And as soon as this came in front of me, then I could understand, this is the truth. I was wondering where the truth was. I had wanted to understand the truth, but I had thought, you'll never get it. You can't get it. There is no truth. It doesn't exist. And then when I encountered the truth, wait a minute. This is what I was looking for earlier and I couldn't find. And here it is. It's right here. This is the truth. Yes. Krishna consciousness. And here I am 50 years later. Still convinced. It didn't take much for me. Like, this is what I want. This is what I wanted to find out. What is the nature of the universe? What is heaven? What is hell? Who are we? Why are we here? Why am I not getting any happiness out of it? Trying to squeeze it out of my senses. It's just not working. I'm not satisfied. Well, this is why. Okay, now I get it. And one thing leads to the next. Read the book, drop out of college, move in the temple. Not everyone does that now. Some people move in the temple still go to college, right, Garanga?
I do.
But Yeah. But even though you move in the temple, you still go to college, you realize this is college. It sucks. You know.
You gotta memorize stuff, it's just like.
Well, there's plenty of good stuff to memorize here. Like Nayam Deho Deham Bhajam Nirloke Kastam Kaman Arhante Vid Bujam Ye Tapo Divyam Putrakayen Satnam. What's the last line? Yasmad Brahma Sokyam. Sujad Yasyat. Sujad. Yeah. Sujad Yasmad Brahma Sokyam Twanantam. You can get eternal spiritual happiness by performing divine austerity. All right, so we'll stop here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I'll do this one tomorrow.
Yeah, first one tomorrow.